Welcome to Sidequests, the podcast that explores the strange, surprising, and often forgotten rabbit holes of history. Because sometimes history isn't what happens when people are trying to change the world. It's what happened when the world was making other plans. It started with one woman. On a hot July morning in 1518, she walked into the street in Strasbourg and began to dance. Not for celebration, not to music. She just danced, and she didn't stop. Not that day, not the next. Within a week, dozens had joined her. By the end of the month, people were collapsing in the streets. Some even died. No one knew what was happening. Doctors were baffled, clergy were terrified, and the city responded in a way that might be the worst public health advice in history. They built a stage and brought in musicians. This is the story of the dancing plague, a medical mystery, a cultural crisis, and one of the strangest outbreaks ever recorded. At the time, the city was part of the Holy Roman Empire. It was a rough summer. The region had been hit by famine. Plague still lingered in people's memories. Religious anxiety was everywhere. This was just a few years before Martin Luther would launch the Reformation. People were poor, tired, scared. And then one woman, Frau Trophea, stepped into the street and started to dance. According to contemporary reports, she danced for hours. No music, no celebration, no joy, just frenzied, compulsive movement. She danced until her feet bled, collapsed from exhaustion, and then got up and danced again. Within a few days, others joined her, dozens, maybe hundreds. Some say up to 400 people were eventually overtaken by the compulsion. Witnesses described it as a madness, a frenzied, involuntary trance. Some laughed, others wept. No one could explain it, and the dancers claimed they couldn't stop. What started as a bizarre street scene quickly turned into a public health crisis. People were collapsing from heat and exhaustion. Some had seizures. There are even reports, though debated, that a number of people died from sheer overexertion. The city council and local physicians scrambled for answers. Was it an illness? A curse? Demonic possession? And just when it seemed like things couldn't get weirder, the city decided the best course of action was more dancing. It was like the movie Footloose in reverse. The leaders of Strasbourg consulted doctors, clergy, and astrologers. The diagnosis? Not poison, not infection, but hot blood. This idea was rooted in the ancient humors theory of medicine, which suggested human behavior was governed by a balance of bodily fluids. Too much heat in the blood, they believed, could cause restlessness and irrational behavior. And how do you treat overheated blood? Ideally, you sweat it out. So the city's solution was to genuinely encourage more dancing. They cleared space in the town square, built a stage, and hired musicians and professional dancers to accompany the afflicted. The logic was simple. If the dancers could just finish whatever was happening, work it out of their system, it would all be over. But it didn't work. In fact, it may have made things worse. With music fueling the frenzy and crowds gathering to watch, the dancing continued, day after day, week after week. People collapsed on the streets, limbs shaking, unable to stop. Eyewitnesses said that at the height of the outbreak, up to 15 people were dying each day from exhaustion. Eventually, the authorities had to admit this was no ordinary case of overheated blood. The music stopped. The stages were dismantled, and desperate families began dragging their loved ones to churches and shrines, hoping for divine intervention. So what was the dancing plague? Modern historians and scientists have proposed a handful of possible explanations: biological, psychological, and folkloric. And the truth? We still don't know for sure. Let's start with the old favorite, ergot poisoning. Ergot is a hallucinogenic fungus that grows on damp rye. Chemically similar to LSD, it can cause muscle spasms and mania. So did people eat bad bread and dance themselves to death? It's a popular theory, but it doesn't hold up well under scrutiny. Ergot usually causes violent, painful twitching, not rhythmic, continuous dancing. Furthermore, people wouldn't have been able to dance for days on end. They would have been writhing in agony. So that brings us to a more modern and likely more accurate theory: mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria. This is when a group of people under extreme stress begin to experience real physical symptoms without a clear medical cause. It's the body reacting to anxiety, trauma, and fear. Strasbourg in 1518 was the perfect breeding ground. Famine, disease, political instability, and religious fear. Combine that with a cultural belief that certain saints, especially St. Vitus, the patron saint of dancing, could either curse or heal through uncontrollable movement, and you have a recipe for what one historian called a psychogenic epidemic. By late August 1518, roughly a month after it began, the dancing started to fade. The surviving dancers were taken out of the city, many of them escorted barefoot to a mountaintop shrine dedicated to St. Vitus. There they performed rituals, offered prayers, and wore red shoes blessed with holy water, and the dancing stopped. There are no reports of the outbreak continuing beyond that. It just ended. The dancing plague of 1518 stands as a powerful, unsettling reminder that when fear and belief collide, the results can be both heartbreaking and bizarre. Some side quests don't have a tidy resolution, just a trail of breadcrumbs, leading through half-understood human behavior and the shadows of belief. That's it for today's side quest. If you enjoyed the little detour, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves history's odd corners. This has been Side Quests, because history is what happens when the world is making other plans.